لله الذي إليه مسائر الخلق وواقب الأمر نحمده على عظيم إحسانه ونير البرهان ونوامر فضله حمدا يكون لحقه فزاء ولشكره أداء وإلى صوابه موجبا ولحسن مزيده مقربا الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين راحة للعاشقين والمراد المشتاقين شمس العارفين والسراج الصالحين نبيه مصباح والعلم صاحب الجود والكرم والله حافظه وجبرائيل خادمه والبراق مركبه سدرة المنتهى مقامه كعب قوسين محبوب رب المشرقين والمغربين جد الحسن والحسين مولانا ومولاي الثقلين أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
ثم الصلاة والسلام على جميع أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين المنتخبين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
ولعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم منكر فزائهم غاصب حقوقهم ومراتبهم ومنزلتهم ومكانهم من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في قرآنه الكريم وهو أصدق القائلين قوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أن رآه استغنى صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل.
We're looking over the next 10 days at the topic of the digital deed. So, what is Islam like in this world, the world we live in today? When you've got Maulana sitting on the middle of an iPad, that's the digital age. That's the day and age where everything is done digitally. And I'm not just talking about your socials, it's not just Insta and Twitter and TikTok. It's so much more than that, it's everything. Everything we do is digital. No matter what you do, no matter where you look, it's all digital. So for instance, when the poster for this Ashra was shared, I had at least 10, 15 people messaging me to ask, is it going to be live on YouTube? And that's the digital way of doing things. You don't have to go into the mosque, you don't have to go into Imam Barga. You can do it digitally. Of course, being here is better, but we live in a digital age. These things are just expected. It's not something that, it's quite amazing if it's shown live on YouTube. No, it's not something that's quite amazing if it's shared the next day on YouTube. It's just expected because that's the day and age we live in. But see, Islam as a religion was completed a very long time ago. That's what we'll look at today. Over the course of the next 10, 11 days, depending on whether the moon's sighted today, we're going to look at what Islam actually looks like in this digital age, in our lives and in our religious lives as well, in our daily lives when we go to school and work and do whatever we do, and also when we're trying to be a good Muslim, how does the world we live in today and how it's changed affect that? The ayah I chose to head up this lecture for today is an ayah from Surah Al-Alaq. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, once they think they're self-sufficient. And the reason I chose this ayah is because this little excerpt, the start of Surah Al-Alaq, it's a very good kind of cover point for a few of the things we're going to look at over the next few days. And it also leads really well into what we want to look at today specifically. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, once they think they are self-sufficient. But that excerpt, the start of Surah Al-Alaq, let's look at it as a whole. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. A lot of us know that ayah. It's the first ayah that was ever revealed to Prophet Muhammad in the cave of Hira. Read. Iqra bismi rabbika al-khalaq. In the name of your Lord who created. Created what? Khalaq al-insana min alaq. He created mankind. He created man from a clot. Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Read. And your Lord is merciful. He's graceful. He's generous. الذي علم بالقلم. And he taught you by the pen. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. He taught people what they didn't know. كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى. But people, mankind, they transgress, they make mistakes, they get things wrong. أن رآه استغنى. That's the ayah that we're looking at today in particular. أن رآه استغنى. Once they think they are self-sufficient. Inna ila rabbika ar-raj'a. Indeed, your Lord is the return. The reason I've chosen to look at these few ayats, just to start off with, just to cover an overview of the whole topic that we're going to look at of digital deen, is because it covers a lot of the things that we're going to look at. We start off with Iqra bismi rabbika al-khalaq. We know that that's a very, very common, very famous ayah of the Quran. It goes on to speak about how man was created. The bit I want to focus on is Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Recite, and your Lord is most generous. In the next few days, in the coming days, we're going to look at how we look at that generosity of Allah Azza wa Jal. And online, when we look at how Allah Azza wa Jal is generous to other people in different ways to the ways He's generous to us. When we look online and we see somebody has X, Y, and Z, you know, somebody got a PS5 before me, this person's spending their holidays in Dubai and in Turkey and Morocco, but I'm stuck at home. When we look at how, or we try to compare the generosity of Allah with me and the generosity of Allah with somebody else, how does that affect us? How do we work around that? That's one thing we're going to look at over the next few days. And then it goes on to say, we taught you by the pen. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He taught you by the pen. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ. One of the things that people, or one of the arguments that people levy against Islam, the arguments they use against the religion of Islam, is they say that Islam was born, or Islam was raised by two things. The sword of Ali and the wealth of Khadija. Alayhi salatu wassalam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
We say no, Islam is a religion of knowledge. The reason they say that it was the wealth of Bibi Khadija and the sword of Imam Ali is because they want to tell people, they want to tell the world that Islam became as big as it is today because in the early days people were bribed by the wealth of Bibi Khadija, or they were threatened by the sword of Imam Ali. Either the wealth attracted them, or they were scared of Imam Ali alayhi salam's sword, of his strength, of his power. And we say, no, Islam's a religion of knowledge. It's a religion of logic. It's a religion of reasoning. That's why we believe in this religion. That's why we believe in Islam. But see, over the years, this knowledge, it's been suppressed. It's been hidden away from those who want to believe in Islam, those who want to learn. It's been tried to be tarnished again and again and again, and in so many different ways throughout the ages. For the very simple reason that when people start to gain knowledge, when they learn, when they think, it's great for the person, it's great for the individual, but it's not great for institutions. The more you think freely and openly, the more dangerous it is for people who are power hungry, for people who are greedy. The more easy it is for you to see what they're doing and what's going on in their minds and in their plans. So they've always tried to suppress it, be it in the times of our Imam, where our Imams were in prison, be it in the times of our Imam, where our books were burned, be it in the times of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, where people were told, if you teach about Islam, you will be in prison, be it in the times of, or our time today. Information is still hidden away from us today, but it's done in a different way. Before they would burn our books and hide away our scholars and try and kill the people who teach you about Islam, now what do they do instead? They make you think you've got all the knowledge available to you. They overload you with so much knowledge you can't find the bits that are important. They cloud it out. We're going to look at that in a few days as well. When we look online, we've got this wealth of knowledge, so much that we can find out about Islam, so much so that in the olden days, or in some very remote cultures in the world today, on the Day of Judgment, the people from there will be able to say, Allah, I didn't know, and that will be a good enough excuse. But for us, it's very difficult on the Day of Judgment for one of us to turn around and go, oh Allah, I didn't know. Why? Because the knowledge is all there, we just have to go and get it. The knowledge is all available to us, we just have to go and find it. So we're going to be talking about how to find the right knowledge online, where to find the right knowledge online, what to trust, what not to trust, what to understand, what not to understand. This is another thing we're going to be looking at. And then, and this is coming on to what we're going to speak about in more depth today as well. The bit where Allah Azza wa Jalla says, because He sees Himself as self-sufficient, once they think they are self-sufficient, this ayah of the Quran. Now, if you were to take just that ayah, you would think we are self-sufficient. That means we don't depend on anything, we don't depend on anyone. The word self-sufficient, that's what it means. It means you sustain yourself, you take care of yourself. That means you don't need your parents, that means you don't need your friends, you don't need your family, you don't need Allah na'udhu billah. It says in the Quran, once they think they are self-sufficient. So if you're thinking, then you don't need those people, you don't need Allah Azza wa Jalla either, you don't need Islam either. But of course, we know what Islam teaches as a whole. We know that can't possibly be what this ayah of the Quran is saying. And this is the last thing that I'm going to mention for the overview of the whole thing we're talking about. See, if you were to take that ayah and think that this is the meaning, you'd be forgiven for thinking that's what it means, that you don't need anybody or anything, if you just took that ayah. But there's a whole chapter around it. I didn't notice that fell off, I just saw it put it down there. There's a whole set of verses around it that explain it, and this is so much easier. In this instance, it's so easy to explain what the ayah is talking about. Why? Because the ayah before it goes, no. People make mistakes once they think they are self-sufficient. See, that same ayah, once you add the ayah before it, completely changes the meaning. And you only have to look at the ayah before it to understand what it's talking about. But if you look at just that ayah, you'll make a mistake. The very same mistake that this Quran is talking about in Surah Alaq. Because you think you are self-sufficient, and what it's talking about is arrogance. The arrogance of thinking you know more than you do. See, this is one of the biggest problems that we have nowadays, especially online, is people not realizing how much they don't know. People not realizing it takes a lot more than a quick Google search to be able to understand every fatwa, to understand every facet of what Islam is telling us and teaching us. If you look at Tawheed and theology, if you look at just Tawheed, the most basic principle of Islam, people spend their entire lives studying Tawheed and still don't understand it. And when I say people, I don't mean the average layman, I mean scholars, well-renowned scholars. And you're telling me a quick Google search told you all you need to know to start telling everybody else about it? Of course not. Take my example, for instance. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a scholar by any means. I'm very, very far from it. I'm a student of a student of a student, so far away from the level of being a scholar. Before I come to do a lecture, it takes hours and hours and hours of preparation, 7, 8 hours a day, just for the preparation of this lecture, and that includes calling on things that I've researched before. That includes calling on things that I've learned before, so hours and hours in the past, and then the hours and hours that are dedicated to each and every individual lecture. But even still, it's quite scary coming and sitting up here. Not because it's nerves about speaking in front of people, not anything like that. It's nerves because I know how important what I say from this minbar is. What I say from a point of responsibility is. And to explain that to you guys, let's say, for instance, there's what? 20, 35 of us here. If I read for 1 hour, on the Day of Judgment, Allah isn't going to say to me, Zaki, that 1 hour of your time, did you spend it wisely? No. Allah Azza wa Jal, if we say there's 35 people in this hall, I have to account for 35 hours. Now that's just the people sitting in front of me right now. Think about when you go on Twitter and you post a tweet about something Islamic. It's not just 35 people who see that. It might only be 1 or 2 people who like it, but that goes around. Loads of people see that. We're going to look at this as well in the coming few days. The responsibility that you have, considering how many people see what you're saying. Because people will believe what you say, people will develop their own belief system based on what you say, they will practice what they want to practice based on what you say. I'll give you a quick example here. The past few days I've been in Wales with a youth group, and at Fajr time, one of the boys went and told all the other boys, oh, by the way guys, you know, like I saw you guys doing wudu, you weren't doing it right. When you do masah, you guys were doing with 4 fingers, you're meant to do it with your whole hand like this. That's not correct. But say me or the other mentors didn't hear about that. All the other kids on that group, if they spend the rest of their life doing wudu incorrectly, who do you think has to answer for that? That one boy for that one thing he said in that one moment. Now fair enough, he made a mistake. Okay. But we have to be very careful with what we say, who we say it to, where we say it. It's very important to understand this thing, and that's what we're going to continue to look at over the next few days. Moving on very quickly to this point and what we're talking about in this ayah today. There's one overarching question. We said Islam's a religion of logic, a religion of reasoning. Sometimes we feel like there's questions we can't ask. And when I did a youth session on the very topic we're going to speak about today, before, I was told by so many people, you can't talk about that, that's not right. And the reason is because what I was talking about is I asked the question, does Islam still matter? Is it still relevant? Does it make a difference to me today? And I was told by so many people, Muslims, Shias, Mu'mineen, you can't ask that question, you can't speak about that kind of stuff, why not? These are the exact kind of things that we need to be questioning, need to be understanding. Just think about it. We're all Mu'mineen, we all believe in Allah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wa salam. And because of that, we all know that ayah very well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-Islam deena. On this day, I have completed for you your religion. That's the only part of the ayah I really want to focus on for this. On this day, I have completed for you your religion. That is absolute fact. There is no ifs or buts there. Islam has not changed since the day of Hadith. Islam has not had any additions, any amendments, any subtractions, nothing. And if anybody has tried, then we don't accept it. Why? Because Islam on that day was completed. Allah says it in the Quran in the clearest terms. But the world has changed so much since then. Everything has changed in the world since then. So how can we still think Islam applies to our life today? How can we still consider Islam to be relevant today if in all that time Islam hasn't changed, Islam hasn't progressed, Islam hasn't stayed up to date with the times? If you look at other religions, you'll see that things that weren't acceptable before are now acceptable in those religions. Rules have changed. You'll see that beliefs have changed based on the times. But in Islam that never happened. Nothing ever changed in Islam. Islam is today the exact same as it was in the time of the Prophet. Exact same as it was on that day of Badr. It hasn't changed, so how can it still be relevant? How can Islam still apply to me today? Now let's look at this ayah. Allah Azza wa Jalla here, He's telling us that He's taught us what we need to know. And it's said in the Quran again and again. All the knowledge you need to know is there. So if He's given us all that knowledge, if it's all there in the Quran, why do I need the rest of Islam? Is Islam still important to me if I've already been given all of that knowledge? I'll give you an example to explain why that's a question. If you're friends with someone just for their money, let's say, the only reason you're friends with someone is because they're rich, they've got a lot of money, they treat you nicely, when you go out they'll pay and whatnot, all of that. Once you've got your own money, more money than them, let's say, or even if it's not more money than them, once you've got your own money, good money, are you still going to want to be friends with that person? What's the point? You weren't friends with them because you liked them. You weren't friends with them for their personality. You weren't friends with them because they're funny. You were friends with them for their money, and you've got that now. The Quran tells us again and again, all the knowledge you need is there. It's in the Quran. Everything you need is there. So why can't we just take the Quran and then, we don't need to pray, we don't need to do the R's, we don't need to fast in Ramadan. All the knowledge I need to live my life, live it happy, it's there in the Quran. Does the rest of it all matter? Is Islam still relevant if it's already given me everything I need? See, here's the thing. Allah's not put all that knowledge in our minds. He's not given you in your head all the knowledge about the world that you need. What He's done is He's made that knowledge available to you. He's presented that knowledge out there for you, but you have to go and get that knowledge still. And here's the difference between us and the Ahlul Bayt, the Imams, the Prophets. In that Allah Azza wa Jal, He puts knowledge into their minds. And it's, I've reached this point, so I'll mention it. It's a common misconception. We think that the Imams know everything. That's not necessarily true. They don't always know everything at any one time, but when they need a bit of knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal, He opens up that knowledge for them and gives it to them in that moment. The Imams don't live their lives, and the Prophets don't live their lives knowing everything that will always happen and everything on earth. No, only Allah has that much knowledge. But Allah makes that knowledge available to the Imams and the Prophets as and when they need it, as and when they want it. But for us, we have to go and get that knowledge. We have to go and find that knowledge. Find it in the Quran. Quran is Ummul Kitab. It means everything is in there. We have to find it in the Quran. We have to find it in the world around us. That's one. Allah hasn't just put all that knowledge in our minds. So we still need to listen to what Allah says so that we can find that knowledge. The second thing is, what Islam tells us to make our life better, the knowledge that Islam has to give us, it goes hand in hand with what Islam tells us to do. So for instance, if we look at finding knowledge in the Quran, if we want to read the Quran every day, it's not easy. It takes a bit of discipline within us to make sure we do it. It's like if you want to go gym, it takes a bit of discipline to go gym every day. You got to stay motivated, you got to stay doing it. Like with me, for instance, so I used to go gym every day properly, didn't miss it, and then one day I missed it and I haven't been back for about 3 years. It takes discipline, it takes motivation. You have to keep going, it's not easy. So Allah Azza wa Jalla tells you, you know what? Pray 5 times a day. Keep that discipline, make sure you're praying 5 times a day. When it comes to Ramadan, you're not going to eat while the sun's in the sky. Control yourself, have a bit of discipline. Islam's giving us all these tools so that we can maintain ourselves, so that we can keep ourselves on routine in that same sense, so that we can then take the best from what Islam has to give us. If you have that discipline, if you have that routine, it's a lot easier to read Quran every day and learn a little bit every day. It's a lot easier to read a book about, not necessarily Islam, I was going to say read a book about Islam though. One of the things Islam tells us is to gain knowledge. It doesn't say gain knowledge about Islam, it says learn about the world around you. In fact, it says in the Quran, go travel the earth and learn about the earth. And then you'll learn about Islam through it. If you want to gain everything that Islam has to give you, you have to follow what it tells you to do. Why? Because it helps you stay maintained in your religion. It helps you keep up with what you need to keep up with, so that you have the tools to get all that knowledge that you need. It requires a certain mindset to have that kind of motivation. Fair. That's us talking about knowledge. Okay, if Islam has given me everything, there's still reasons that I need to follow Islam. Fine. But what does Islam actually help me with in my day-to-day life, every day? Does Islam actually contribute? Does it help me at all? All I see from Islam, and this is something that a lot of people feel, all they see is that it just restricts them. You can't eat this, you can't go there, you can't do that. You have to do this, and it has to be at this time. Islam's just a set of rules. That's what a lot of people see it as. That's what a lot of people think. And if it's just a set of rules, you're going to fall out of love with it so quickly. If it's just a set of rules, you're not going to care about it. You're not going to have any kind of affinity with it, any kind of connection to it. Because all it is rules. When we're in school, even when you're older, when you're at work, nobody likes the rules. Nobody enjoys those rules. Nobody enjoys the fact that you have to be in the office by 9 a.m. every day. No. That's what they've decided. I can like my job, but also not like the fact that I have to be in at 9 a.m. every day. No, if it's just rules, nobody likes rules. That's just normal. That's how we feel. That's how we are. But all of these rules that Islam gives us, that's all it seems like. It's just rules upon rules upon rules. You have to do this, you can't do this. You have to eat this, you can't eat that. Islam tells us every single thing about how to live our lives. It's just rules. But let's look at some of those rules. For instance, you can't eat pork, for instance. You can't eat pork. Why? Well, we know that. Pigs are dirty animals. They're not good for us to eat. Okay, fine. You can't drink alcohol. Why? You drink alcohol, you get drunk, it leads to bad decisions. It's bad for your health. Okay, fair enough. There's a reason there. You have to fast in Ramadan. Why? It builds your willpower, it builds your strength, it builds your ability to hold on to a routine. It helps you control yourself. Okay, fine, there's a reason there. Everything you look at, every rule, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why we do all the things we do. There's a reason we have all those rules, all those regulations. There's a reason why all of that happened, why we've got all of that. But there's 2 different types of benefits that these rules give us. And the way to explain that is, and it's one rule that the adults may find a lot more annoying than the youngers, is the fact that you have to give khums and sadaqah. You know what I mean? You earned, you worked hard, you got your salary, the government took their bit, they took their national insurance, bits gone into your pension, they've taken their tax, everything. Now you've got your money, you're working hard to save up, so you're saving for a house, for instance. Now every year, you've got to take a massive chunk out of those savings and give them as khums. What's that about? How does that benefit me in any way? The other things, okay, it benefits my health. It keeps me, keeps me healthy, keeps me upbeat, keeps me upright. How does this benefit me in any way? See, there's 2 types of benefits that Islam focuses on. There's the worldly benefits and there's what are hidden benefits, the batin. The hidden benefits are all about our soul. Your soul needs to be kept clean, and to keep your soul clean, your money has to be clean. Everything that goes into you, everything about your life, has to be kept clean. In that same way, when you give khums, when you give sadaqah, when you give charity, it cleans your money in a spiritual way. It's not just about the physical, but in a spiritual way, it also cleans your money. But at the same time, there is a physical benefit to it as well. Why? Because if everybody followed that same system, and everybody gave khums, and everybody gave zakat, and everybody gave sadaqah, do you think anybody would be poor in the world if it was done correctly, the Islamic way? No. If everybody gave it the correct Islamic way, and then it was handled and dealt with the correct Islamic way, we're living in an ideal world now. At that point, yeah, Islam is solving real problems that people have. Islam is benefiting people, it's giving you a good result in your life if you follow the religion. But what about the other problems that we face? There's so many problems we face in this day and age, all sorts of things. Financial problems we face, okay, khums and sadaqah, if that works out, there's one kind of solution to it. But all these other problems, all these other difficulties we face, does Islam actually help us? Does it actually make a difference to them? And this is all looking at whether Islam still helps us, whether Islam is still relevant to our lives, whether it makes a difference. Does it or does it not? And the biggest answer to this is that Islam is what you call preventative. It's not remedial. That means Islam tells you what you need to do to stop issues happening or to make it easier to deal with. Islam's not like a paracetamol that you take it after you've got a headache. Islam's more like, it's more like your stretches that you do before cricket or before football or before gym. If you do that, you should be fine for the game. If you don't do that, you're going to be at the physio's office afterwards. Islam's not the physio's office, it's those stretches you're doing beforehand. It's telling you, you know what, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll be fine. If you do X, Y, and Z, then it will be better for you. It'll be easier for you. And that's not to say someone who's a good Muslim can't come across problems, can't go across difficulties in life, because they do. They do. Allah tells you, you will. If you're a good Muslim, things will be tough for you. But at the same time, Islam is giving you the solutions. It's supported you through it. And I'll give you some examples for that. Recite out Salat al-Muharram.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
For instance, pray. You've got to pray 5 times a day. We spoke about how that gives you a routine. It gives you a kind of 5 set pillars to base your day on. When you have that kind of routine, it's very good for you in the sense that the prayer gives you the routine, and the routine, it gives you structure to your day, it gives you purpose to your day. When you have that structure and purpose, then you're able to live your life in a way where your mind is a lot more clear. When your mind's a lot more clear, you're abstaining or holding away issues of mental health. It's one of the biggest things to be able to support yourself. If you can have a clear mind, then you can control that mind. And if you control that mind, then the health of your mental well-being is a lot better. Another one we spoke about was charity and khums and sadaqah. Islam puts a massive emphasis on charity, as do our imams. That charity involves you with the world around you, involves you with people in a very real way, especially when you give your time. When you give your money to some unknown account, fair enough, you might not feel it, but when you give your time, you actually spend your time in the way of sadaqah, in the way of charity, you see how you fit in with people around you, you see the impact you have on people around you. When you see that, it can help you with issues like loneliness, it can help you with issues like isolation. And bearing in mind the time, I'm not going to go too much into that. I'll give you those 2 examples. But Islam does, it's preventative. You follow Islam, it will help you to avoid the problems in the first place. And the last point I'll mention before I move on to Syed is that the world has changed so very much. We said from the day of Ghadir till now, Islam hasn't changed the world, has it? Everything about the world has changed. We're now in this digital age that we're talking about over the next 10, 11 days. When the world has changed so much, how can it be possible that Islam hasn't changed and is still relevant? How can it be possible that it's still important when everything around it has changed? Everything around it has changed, except for the people it applies to. Here's the thing, everything around us has changed. That's normal, that's fine, we accept that. No one's denying that. But we haven't changed. A baby born today is no different to a baby born at the time of the Prophet. A baby born today is no different to a baby that was born in the time of our imams. And Islam is here for us. Our relationship with Islam is what we're looking at. When we look at that relationship, Islam teaches us how to be as pure as the day we were born. That's what Islam wants from us, right? When you're born as a baby, you're masoom, you're pure, you're not committed any sins, you're a clean slate, and you are only that which Allah has given you. Your nature, everything, the things you like, the things you don't like. When a baby's born and it can recognize its parents, that's something that Allah has given it. That's innate. That's what you want to fit right. It understands who its parents are, who's going to protect it. When a baby's born and danger's coming towards it, the feeling of wanting to protect itself, and that goes throughout your life. The feeling of wanting to protect yourself from danger, that's innate. That comes from the moment you're born, that stays with you to the moment you die. We as people have not changed. Now here's the difference. When we grow up, there's things around us in the world, in our environment, that will pull us one way or another, that will change us. They will change who we are because that's our environment. That has an impact on us. But our core, our fitrah, that hasn't changed. That can only change if you let it change. If you let your environment seep so deep into you that it changes your core, your fitrah, then you will change. But Islam is there to keep that from happening, to stop that from happening. I'll give you a very basic example. Certain types of music are haram. Reason being is, certain types of music will increase your reliance on that music. So if you notice, sometimes when you listen to a lot of music, and specific types of music, you'll realize that you can't now study without listening to music. If you want to study, you've got to have your headphones in, otherwise things don't make sense. Or for instance, eating something without watching TV, or without having something on Netflix. So many of us will realize we feel like we can't do that. You weren't born like that, guarantee you that. I can promise you, you weren't born not needing to watch something while you eat. That's our environment, that's changed us. You become so used to it that you think, okay, now I need that. And it's the way the world changes us. But Islam, it deals with that purest version of us. It takes care of you, it protects you, so that you can stay in that purest version, that purest form. And for that very reason, Islam is so much more relevant today than it was ever before. Islam was always relevant, always important. But this question of, is Islam still important today? It's not that it's not important. Actually, in this day and age, Islam is more important than ever before to us. Why? Because there are so many distractions now. So many things to pull you away from Islam and pull you away from that innate sense, that core that you should be. So many things out there to change you from exactly what you should be like, that you really need to cling on to Islam in this day and age, in this digital day and age, to make sure that you don't lose that core of yourself, to make sure you don't lose who you really and truly are. And that's the last point I'll mention before we move on to Masai. See, we've got all of these different things trying to pull us away, trying to make things difficult for us, trying to make things harder for us, trying to stop us from being good Muslims, from being that pure, core version of yourself that we want to be. And I said that it's more difficult now than it ever has been before, but that doesn't mean it was ever easy. That doesn't mean it was ever a stroll in the park to be a good Muslim. And to understand that, you only need to look at the people who we revere. You only need to look at the best of Muslims. Look at what they did, look at what they went through, and you'll find real trouble, you'll find real pain, real trials, real tribulations. For us Muslims, nothing comes close to our Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. But still, we gather here and we remember them and we cry. On this first night of Majlis, there is one story that I always recite, one story of Masai that I always recite, just to understand what these Majlis are. Just to understand how important they are. But as I say, I'll say one very, very important thing. A lot of us have made a mistake. When I say us, I mean the wider community. A lot of us have made the mistake of making these Majalis the entirety of our religion. This is a supplement of your religion for you to go into your daily life and act upon it, learn more from it, and grow from this. This is just the seed. This isn't the entire tree. but it's still so important. And there's a story that demonstrates so beautifully how important that is, and I recite it every year on the very first night of Majlis. There was a woman who with her son every year, she would do an Ashra Majlis in her home. She would invite people to her home, they would do the Majlis, they would cry over Imam Hussain for 10 days. That woman's son unfortunately passed away at a young age. The year after he passes away, Muharram starts to approach. And now that woman, she's thinking, she's old, she's alone, it was just her and her son, they had nobody else. How's she going to do the Majlis? 10 days of Majlis, it's not easy to organize, it's not easy to do, especially in your own home. How's she going to do it now? She hasn't got anyone to help. She prays to Allah, oh Allah, help me find a way. I want to do Majlis for Imam Hussain, but I'm alone, I can't do it. Muharram gets closer and closer, closer and closer. And the night before Muharram arrives, at this point the woman's given up hope. She turns to Allah, she says, oh Allah, forgive me. I wanted to do Majlis this year, like I do every year, but I wasn't able to. I was alone and I had no help. As she's praying, she hears a knock at the door. She goes to open the door and there's a lady there. She says, I was told that at this house every year there are Majlis for Imam Hussain. The woman who owns the house, the host, she says, unfortunately this year I won't be able to because I used to do it with my son, but I no longer have my son. He's passed away. I'm alone and there's no one to help me. The woman who came to the door, she says, look, there's you, there's me, let's make it happen, let's do it. So together the two ladies, they set up the Majlis. They call the people, quickly, come quickly, we'll have Majlis this year. The host is very grateful to this lady. She's never met her before. She's traveling through the town. She's helped to do Majlis at Imam Hussain. She's very grateful. And she notices every single night when the guests come, this woman greets every person like it's her house. And when they leave, they thank her like it's her Majlis. Every night, every single night, the same thing. And then the night of the night, Muharram arrives. The woman turns to the host and she says, look, now I have to go. The woman says, but tomorrow is Ashra. We've done 9 days of Majlis. She says, look, everything's set up. You can do Majlis tomorrow. The woman says, you have to stay. You've helped me through all of this. How can you leave just before Ashura? We have to do Ashura together now. You came and you stayed and you helped me. These Majlis wouldn't happen if it weren't for you. You have to be here for Ashura. The woman says, no, I've got a very far away place I have to travel to. I've got a very long distance that I have to travel to and I have to get there before tomorrow. The woman says, no, please. She pleads and pleads with her guests to get her to stay, but her guests will not stay. The woman leaves. 10th of Muharram comes, the Majlis is held. People come, they cry, they do martyr, they leave. On the 11th of Muharram, the host, she thinks, let me go to my son's grave. Let me go see my son's grave and tell him how we had Majlis today. Sit by the grave and just tell the story. As she reaches the grave, she sees someone standing over the grave. There's an old lady there. She sees the old lady, she calls out to her, excuse me, but I think you might have the wrong grave. This is my son's grave. He didn't know anybody. Nobody ever comes to his grave. I think maybe you might be looking for a different grave. Here, let me help you find it. The woman turns around and looks. She sees, the host sees, this was the same guest who came to my house every day. That guest looks at her host and she says, for 10 days, you cried over my son. Now tonight, Zahra will cry over your son. Tonight, Zahra will cry for your son who you have lost. This is the importance of this Farsh Azhar. This is what these Majlis mean. Typically on tonight's night, on this night, we remember the moment that Karbala's journey first started, where Imam Hussain al-Islam, in the middle of the night, he is called to the palace of Marwan. Imam Hussain is getting ready to go. In all this, Sayyidah Zainab finds out that Imam Hussain has to go to the palace of Marwan. She becomes worried. Why? In the middle of the night, they've called you. They are clear enemies of the family of Rasulullah. Why have they called Imam Hussain? She says to her brother, Hussain, don't go to the palace. Imam Hussain says, Zainab, understand this much. Hussain will die, but it won't be in Medina. Tonight I will be safe. Bibi Zainab, her heart cannot rest. She turns and calls the first person she thinks of for help. She turns around and calls out Abbas. Abbas, go with your master Hussain, go with my brother Hussain. Make sure nothing happens to him. Abul Fadl Abbas, he calls Akbar, he calls Qasim, he calls Ja'far, he calls On, he calls Muhammad, he calls all of the young men of Banu Hashim. 18 young men march with Imam Hussain to the palace of Marwan. As they arrive at the palace, Marwan's guards, they say to Imam Hussain, you can go inside, but the rest of these men, the rest of these boys, the rest of these people, all have to stay out here. Abul Fadl Abbas does not take orders from the guard of Marwan. He turns to Abu Abdullah, he says, tell me, shall I come inside with you or shall I stay here? Do I have your permission or not? That's the only permission Abbas needs. Imam Hussain says, Abbas, look, you stay here. Abbas, you wait here. I'm going to go inside. Abbas, keep the boys here. Don't let them come inside. Abul Fadl Abbas looks at Imam Hussain and he says, Master, forgive me. But I made a promise to Zainab that I would not let anything happen to Hussain. Imam Hussain says to Abbas, look Abbas, I won't make you break your promise. If you hear me raise my voice, then you can enter the palace. Until then, stay out here with everyone else. Imam Hussain goes inside. Marwan addresses him and says, look, the Khalifa of the Muslims has died. Muawiyah has died. Or he called you here to ask you to give allegiance. You must pledge your allegiance to Yazid and Muawiyah. Imam Hussain flat out refuses. He says no. They press him again. They say, no, we need you to give your allegiance. Imam Hussain says, look, if this is such a good thing, if this is such a great thing to give allegiance to Yazid, why are you asking me here in the dead of the night behind closed doors? Ask me tomorrow in Masjid al-Nabawi after namaz. I'll give you my answer then. Imam Hussain turns to leave. In that, Walid says to Marwan, if he leaves here today, you will never get bay'ah from Hussain. Either get his bay'ah now or cut off his head. Imam Hussain turns around. First he looks at Walid, then he looks at Marwan. He looks them dead in the eyes and asks them, so who will it be that kills me? Will it be you, Walid, or will it be you, Marwan? As he says this is the son of Ali. This is the son of Haydar. His voice is raised. Abul Fadl Abbas outside hears his master raise his voice. He rushes into the palace. He draws his sword. Imam Hussain places his hand on the chest of Abbas. He says, Abbas, no, now is not the time for war. This is the city of Rasulullah. We cannot let blood spill here. My heart goes out to Abul Fadl Abbas. I have two questions for Abul Fadl Abbas in this moment. My heart asks two things. Again and again in the life of Abbas, he would draw his sword and he would be told, Abbas, no, not now. Abbas is renowned for his bravery. Everybody knows Abbas to be a warrior, but every time he wants to show the world what kind of a warrior he is told, no, Abbas, not now, not right now. I ask my Mawla Abbas, which moment was the most painful? Which time when you were told to put your sword away was the most painful? Was it in Kufa, where you heard the cry of Fustu Rabbil Kaaba? Abbas takes his sword, he rushes to the masjid. What does Imam Ali say? He says, Abbas, put your sword away. Ibn Muljim is scared, go get him something sweet to drink. Abbas, was that the most difficult? Or was it here in Medina, where you enter the palace of Marwan, and Imam Hussain says, Abbas, go and tell your sisters you are leaving. Go and tell them to pack their bags. Was it on the 2nd of Muharram, where an army stands in front of Hussain and tells Imam Hussain, no, you must remove your tents, water will not be made available for you? Or was it on Ashra, when Sakina looks up at Abul Fadl Abbas and she says, all I want is one drop of water? But Hussain says, Abbas, no. Abul Fadl Abbas, so many times he wanted to protect his master, he wanted to protect his family, he wanted to protect his brother or his father or his niece, but never was he allowed. But Abul Fadl Abbas, when Imam Hussain tells him no, he listens. He puts his sword away. He returns back to the house. Imam Hussain alayhi salam tells Abbas, Abbas, go and get all the things packed up. Bibi Zainab comes to Imam Hussain. Imam Hussain says, Zainab, the time has come for your brother to leave Medina. Bibi Zainab says, I must come with you. Imam Hussain says, go and ask your husband for permission. Bibi Zainab goes, gets permission. She begins packing up. I'm going through all of the Messiah. Namaz time is approaching fast. There comes a moment where people are asking now Imam Hussain, who shall come with you? The family of Imam Hussain is all gathered in his house. They are asking Imam Hussain, who is traveling with you and who is staying in Medina. Imam Hussain says, look, I will read out the list of the names of all of those who will be killed in Karbala. They are the people who will come with me and their families will come too. Imam Hussain reads name after name. He reads the name Abbas, husband Abbas and his family, get ready. He reads the name of Qasim, Hazrat Qasim and his family, get ready. He reads the name of Ali Akbar, him and his family, get ready. He reads the name of Ahwan, he reads the name of Muhammad, he reads the name of John and Habib and Horan, everybody who was there in Medina begins to get ready. Imam Hussain gets to one point, he stops, he turns to Abbas and very quietly he says the name to Abbas. After this, Hazrat Abbas goes to Bibi Fatima Sughra. He says, Bibi, I don't know how to say this much, but all I can say is that baby in your arms, his name is on the list. Bibi Fatima Sughra Abbas. She says, how will Asghar fight? How will Asghar give his life? Abul Fadl Abbas shakes his head. He does not know how to answer. How could Abul Fadl Abbas know? Even on the day of Ashra, when Imam Hussain called out, Hal min Nasirin Yansurana, is there anybody out there to help me? Abbas was not there to see what Ali Asghar did in that moment. The people get ready, the families get their things together, one by one. Everybody comes to Imam Hussain and says, we are ready to leave, we are ready to go. Imam Hussain al-Islam, he turns to his brother Abbas, he says, to Abul Fadl Abbas, he says, Abbas, clear the streets of Medina. Tell everybody to stay in their homes today. Nobody will leave the streets. Bring the horses and the carriages. Make sure they are decorated nicely. Today the daughters of Ali will be leaving their house. They will be leaving their city. One by one, now that everybody is ready, they are coming out of the house. All the men came out of the house. They loaded all the trunks and all the things onto the horses and the camels. And now, the ladies of the family of Rasulullah begin to leave the house to enter the carriages. One by one they come out. Bibi Layla steps out. Imam Hussain is sat there on a chair. It's narrated Imam Hussain is sat there watching. All the women are coming out and one by one he's ordering instructions. Imam Hussain is giving instructions to everybody. As Bibi Layla comes out, he turns to Hazrat Ali Akbar and says, Akbar, come forward, help your mother enter the carriage. Hazrat Ali Akbar helps Bibi Layla. Bibi Farwa comes out. Imam Hussain says to Hazrat Qasim, help your mother enter the carriage. Hazrat Qasim helps his mother into the carriage. Bibi Rabah comes in. Imam Hussain he tells someone to help her into the carriage. Bibi Kulthum comes out. Imam Hussain turns to Abul Fadl Abbas. He says, Abbas, help your sister into the carriage. One by one, the narrator says, I see one person would come forward and put their knee out so that the lady could step on their knee and climb into the carriage. But there comes a point where Imam Hussain, who was sat there watching, he hears the daughter of Ali, Zainab Kubra, is now stepping out of the house. At this point, Akbar rushes forward, Abbas rushes forward, Qasim places his knee in front of Sayyidah Zainab. At this point, every single person steps forward to help Zainab Kubra. Bibi Zainab steps forward, and what do they see? Abu Abdullah himself raises from his chair. He steps forward to help his sister. He says, Zainab, come, let me help you into the carriage. Bibi Zainab says to her brother Hussain, forgive me, I will not be sent into this carriage by you. Abul Fadl Abbas says, look, let me help you into the carriage. Bibi Zainab says, forgive me, not you either, Abbas. Hazrat Ali Akbar says, let me help you. She says, not you, Akbar. Hazrat Qasim says, let me help you. She says, not you, Qasim. One by one, she says no to every single person. She then turns to Imam Hussain and she says to her brother Hussain, in this moment, I will only get into this carriage with the help of that person who on the 11th of Muharram will help me onto the back of the camel. Imam Hussain turns back to the house. He calls out, Sajjad, my prince, come out. Your auntie Zainab needs you. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We raise our hands to pray to Allah Azza wa Jalla. إلهي بحق محمد وأنت المحمود، بحق علي وأنت الأعلى، بحق فاطمة وأنت فاطر السماوات والأرض، بحق حسن وأنت المحسن، بحق حسين وأنت قديم الأحسان. Oh Allah, in these difficult and trying times, allow us all to keep hold of our faith. We pray to Allah Azza wa Jalla, oh Allah, in this day and age, help all those Muslims